The pressures of tax and overheads are putting their entire profession in jeopardy. The Salon Employers Association says half its members are considering closing their businesses, and it's calling for a VAT reduction. Let's speak to the association's co-founder, Toby Dicker. Morning, Toby.
Good morning. Thanks ever so much for having us on.
No, it's good to have you on. I just want to bring in Colette Osborne, who owns 2 salons in Nottinghamshire. Hi, Colette.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
No, it's a pleasure. Toby, first of all, just explain what these tax pressures and overheads are. Why is it that hairdressers are struggling right now?
Look, we're in a unique position as in the hairdressing industry, and that's because of the way taxes are applied. All taxes are applied fairly, but when they add up to a service-based business that adds all its value through labour, then you contribute nearly the full 20p in the pound, or 20%, VAT, claiming back a very small amount. But because your labour costs are so high, those people are also contributing a huge part of it, and it adds up to around 30 to 35p in the pound before you actually do anything else.
And so you're calling for what? A cut of about how much to help hairdressers?
We think there's a simple solution and a change in VAT law in the same way as hospitality got that during COVID, and that's a reduction to 10%. We could have had a million arguments about different taxes that really unfairly penalise hairdressing, but right now it's an emergency. There are 50% of people that responded saying they're going to close their businesses, and what that means is that we just need a level playing field as soon as possible, and a cut to 10% would go some way to helping that. It would save thousands of business. In fact, there are 8,700 zombie companies in the UK right now in our sector, meaning that they are technically insolvent, and they have £266 million worth of government debt. And we're just concerned that if all of those companies go, the government loses even more.
Colette, tell us a little bit about your salons and how your businesses are doing right now.
To be honest, it's absolutely dire, like Toby said, and I'm really grateful for them to actually call for this cut. To give you some idea, in my area, I'm within 350 yards, there's 11 salons. I'm the only employer in VAT registered salon. So this is really difficult for us. If we don't get this, then, you know, the salon you see behind me will undoubtedly have to close, and I'll be forced into closure. Because as Toby said, we have an unlevel playing field. And following COVID as well, we're all still burdened and kind of, you know, struggling with COVID debt. And we just cannot compete when people don't pay VAT. And we really need this. I desperately need this to save people who I employ, my apprenticeships, and basically everybody, really.
I can see behind you. I mean, it's a big, lovely, shiny salon. It looks very appealing, and absolutely understand why people would want to come to your hairdressers. But I guess one of the challenges is that many hairdressers now decide to essentially go self-employed. So what, are they able to undercut you on prices because of that status?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I open my door, Chloe, I'm 42% down. I just cannot compete at that level. And this is the difficulty. To employ people, you've got to be willing to basically lose half of your business as soon as you open the door. And the public aren't aware. So obviously when they're going down the road to somebody else who doesn't pay VAT, doesn't pay employer on costs, and as you said, this self-employed thing, it's not. It's a culture. It's absolutely rife. Like I said, I'm one of 11 salons in 350 yards, and I'm the only employer. And if I look at Nottingham totally, there's probably a dozen of us that employ still. So we are being driven out by tax avoidance models, and my only way of survival is to do that, break the law, or go out of business.
Gosh, and you talked about your COVID debts. What have you got left to pay?
Well, during COVID, obviously, this is one of my 2 salons, so I was forced to take out £250,000 in C-bills. Because obviously during COVID, everybody still wanted paying, despite what everybody says. Furlough was great and that did a lot. However, it was a small amount of our normal overhead. So I'm still paying that for the next 4 years. So, you know, most, you know, we extended it as long as we could. And then we had a cost of living crisis, and we're still disrupted. We're still actually being disrupted by COVID now. So we're still having staff off, clients cancelling because of it. So this VAT cut for us is, it's basically survival. It's the only thing that's going to save us.
Toby, I mean, you mentioned about how other businesses, particularly hospitality, were helped out during COVID, and you want that help now. Some people listening may say, well, you know, the pandemic's over. We've got to move on. Businesses need to stand on their own 2 feet. And if they're not viable, then they will go to the wall. What would you say to somebody who put that argument forward regarding hairdressers?
I would say that because of a lack of enforcement from government, that they are basically choosing for us to go out of business. We pay twice the amount of tax. Hairdressers and hairdressing businesses pay 125% more tax than other business models. We want to continue to contribute that amount of tax, and yet we're being told there's a legitimate model, which I don't believe is legitimate, which is out there, which is paying half the amount. So if you want half the tax take, let us go out of business. That's what I would say. I think the other thing is that there is so little margin in this now. PAYE and VAT paying hairdressers are the ones that train the next generation. There were 17,000 MVQ apprentices prior to COVID, went down to 12,000. There are 5,000 at the last count.
Gosh, that's a huge reduction, isn't it? Huge reduction. Listen, thank you both so much for speaking to us. Toby Dicker there from the Salon Employers Association. I also heard there from Colette Osborne, who's an owner of 2 hair salons in Nottinghamshire, who just says, quite frankly, she is struggling. She loses 42% just by opening her door, 42 pence in the pound.